Taiwan, baby.
Taiwan.
To this day.
To this day. To this day.
To this day.
Motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, I saw this article and I almost lost my lunch. I did.
Why?
I almost lost my lunch because of the sickening level of propaganda this is. This revisionist version of history.
That's what it is.
From one Kevin Lole of Yahoo Sports, who says Deontay Wilder has single-handedly revived the heavyweight division.
Oh.
When anyone who's been keeping up with the division and the sport knows that that's hogwash. That's bullshit. Deontay Wilder has not revived anything.
This is gonna hurt.
Let's talk about it. You know, in this article, Kevin Lole doesn't actually explain how it is that Deontay Wilder revived this division, a division that he's been a part of since November of 2008.
11 years.
That's saying that this guy was around for both the Klitschko brothers. And that's important. That's important when you're talking about what some people would characterize as the dark ages in the heavyweight division, that after a while, things got kind of quiet. And in reality, they didn't get quiet for the division. They just got quiet for the Americans because the Americans really didn't have a pony in the show. They didn't have a champion. We didn't have a champion. So the division seemed all but dead to us. But not for the people over there in Dusseldorf. Not for Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko's fans and the people on that side of the world. The division was very much alive. It was only dark for the people on this side of the world. Nevertheless, this is how some people choose to characterize the reign of the Klitschko brothers. Bert Sugar, the famous Bert Sugar, he wasn't a fan of it either. Very famous character in the sport of boxing. God bless the dead. Better still, this was an era that people on this side of the world described as the dark era of boxing.
For them.
And Deontay Wilder was around for a good chunk of that era. And at the end of that era, it wasn't Deontay Wilder that delivered us from it.
Sorry.
As he neither challenged Vitaly Klitschko for his WBC title or Vladimir Klitschko for his WBA, WBO, and IBF Ring Magazine titles. Deontay Wilder didn't deliver us from that era of boxing because he never challenged either of those two champions. Vitaly retired a champion, you understand. He retired the WBC's heavyweight champion. That belt didn't end up back in circulation because Deontay Wilder pried it from the hands of Vitaly. No.
Not how it happened.
Let me tell you something. In September of 2012, Vitaly Klitschko had his last professional boxing match against Manuel Chaw. That was Vitaly's last fight before he called it a career.
Remember that day.
In September of 2012. Coincidentally, in September of 2012, Deontay Wilder had already amassed 24 professional victories.
24.
He was 24-0 at the time, fighting some 39-year-old undersized heavyweight that goes by the name of Damon McCreary.
39 years old.
24 fights. He never finds the time to challenge Vitaly Klitschko for the green belt. It seems that Deontay Wilder wasn't interested in that belt till Vitaly didn't have it anymore. Because you had 24 fights. How many more fights were you going to need before you stepped it up? How many more fights were you going to need before you challenged a champion? For a perspective, Anthony Joshua didn't even have that many fights when he fought Charles Martin. Hell, Teofimo Lopez didn't have anywhere near that amount of fights when he knocked out Richard Comey for the IBF title. Yet Deontay Wilder, in September of 2012, stood with 24 professional fights and made no attempt to challenge Vitaly for the green belt and deliver us from this quote-unquote dark era of boxing. Now, here's the kicker. Vitaly didn't officially retire in September of 2012.
Nope.
No.
Not yet.
Vitaly Klitschko didn't officially call it a career until a full year later.
A year.
In December of 2013. December of 2013. At this time, Deontay Wilder has amassed 28 professional victories. 28. Yet this guy still makes no effort to contest for that title. No effort whatsoever. Not even a hint from 2012 to 2013 of him trying to get his hands on that belt. No, sir.
Not a damn thing.
If the Klitschko era was the dark ages for the heavyweight division, it's an age that fighters like Deontay Wilder sat by and allowed. Because you never challenged that guy. You never found the time to challenge that guy. At the time this guy calls it a career and retires an emeritus champion, a WBC emeritus champion that can come back at any time and challenge for the title. At the time this happens, Deontay Wilder's got 28 professional fights. Anthony Joshua doesn't even have that many fights here today. Further indicating that Deontay Wilder did not single-handedly deliver us from the dark ages of boxing and revive anything. Because if he wanted to revive the heavyweight division, well, he would have challenged Vitaly. That would have helped. That's basically saying that Deontay Wilder had 4 to 5 years to challenge Vitaly Klitschko for the green belt. He had 4 to 5 years to do it and never got around to it, in spite of having 28 professional fights. 28! Plenty of time to lock horns with that guy. Plenty of time to push the envelope, climb those ranks, and challenge that guy for that belt so that you can, quote-unquote, revive the heavyweight division. Revive it for the Americans. You had 4 to 5 years to do it. Wilder debuted in 2008 and Vitaly retired. Officially retired in 2013. That's 4 to 5 years right there.
What the fuck was he doing?
What was he doing? I'll tell you what he was doing. He was fighting guys like Nikolai Ferta that have 10 pro losses. That's what he was doing. Tell you what he wasn't doing. He wasn't challenging the champions for their belt, thereby reviving the division. He wasn't doing that. Somebody should have called Kevin Lole and told him. Guess he missed it. 28 pro fucking fights. 28. 5 years in the game, and he's fighting a guy with 10 pro losses. 10 pro losses. This is what he's doing 5 years into the game, 28 fights later.
Jesus.
For a perspective, Anthony Joshua stopped fighting those kinds of guys a long time ago, and he's only been in the game about, 6 years?
Fuck's sake.
You don't see him fighting no fucking Nikolai Fertas. And even after Vitaly Klitschko retired in December 2013, you know that Deontay Wilder, he still wasn't lined up for the WBC title. They must have been guiding that guy away from anybody with a pulse in the division. Because even at that time, he's still nowhere near fighting for the WBC title. But you know who was? Bermane Stiverne. Bermane Stiverne, who contested for what was then the vacant WBC title in his rematch with Chris Arreola. The rematch that took place in May of 2014, the sequel to their fight in the previous year. The fuck's Wilder doing the whole time that Bermane Stiverne beats him to the punch and gets to fight for a title before him? What the fuck was Wilder doing? What did they have this guy doing?
Beats me.
But supposedly this is the guy that single-handedly revived the heavyweight division. I'll tell you what, it doesn't look like it. No. At the time that Deontay Wilder so decided, or it was decided for him, because we all know this guy don't make his own decisions. I mean, that much is obvious. At the time it was decided for Wilder that he should fight for a world title, he didn't beat the man to be the man, because the man at that time was Vladimir, holding 3 of the 4 major titles and the Ring Magazine belt. He was the lineal champion at the time, but he is not who Deontay Wilder chose to fight for a world title. He chose to fight a lesser name, a lesser champion, in Bermane Stiverne. And him beating Bermane Stiverne, that didn't revive the heavyweight division.
Far from it.
Tyson Fury got a bigger turnout when he challenged Vladimir Klitschko for all those belts. What was it, like 50,000 people there or something like that? Fury versus Klitschko was a bigger fight than Wilder versus Stiverne. But when Tyson Fury beat Vladimir Klitschko, no one accredited Tyson Fury with reviving the heavyweight division. And we all know why. In spite of it being a bigger fight with more on the line, we all know why. It was due to the aesthetic of the match. It was one of the more ho-hum matches in spite of how much was on the line at the time. Yet, you know, that fight has more to do with what revived today's heavyweight division than Wilder beating Bermane Stiverne. That was small potatoes, even at that time. I'll tell you what Kevin Lole is not telling you. That the revival of the heavyweight division was a 2-pronged process that you can attribute to 2 fighters. 2 fighters that just so happen to come from the same region of the world, the United Kingdom. If the heavyweight division stands reinvigorated here today, you can thank Tyson Fury and you can thank Anthony Joshua. Now, Tyson Fury beating Vladimir Klitschko was the catalyst that set these events in motion. Him beating Vladimir Klitschko and taking his 3 world titles is what caused the ripples that reverberate here today. That's what set these events in motion. Now, we all know that Tyson Fury was supposed to give Vladimir Klitschko a rematch, and he never did that. He had mental issues, alcohol issues, cocaine issues, weight issues. Long and the short of it is that the rematch never happened, and I'm sure you're fully aware. But because the rematch didn't happen, and because Tyson Fury decided to walk away from boxing for a time, the 3 world titles that he won and never defended, well, they were redistributed. This opened the door for the IBF title to be on the line in Martin versus Glaskov. This opened the door for the WBO title to be on the line in Parker versus Ruiz. The WBA title, that title stayed vacant up until the point that Joshua and Klitschko locked horns. But the basic idea here is, what structured today's heavyweight division has more to do with Fury beating Vladimir than vacating those belts than anything that Wilder did. Wilder beating Bermane Stiverne, that didn't make any ripples. That didn't really change anything.
It really didn't.
Today's heavyweight landscape is a landscape that was molded, more or less, by Fury beating Klitschko. Now, that in and of itself, it didn't revive the weight class. What really revived the weight class was Anthony Joshua. Oh yeah, he beats Charles Martin. He becomes a champion, and that was great.
You beat him easy.
He did, and I understand that. But that single victory isn't what revived the division. That wasn't the game changer. The game changer was when Anthony Joshua took that red belt, took that IBF title, and put it on the line against Vladimir Klitschko for what was then not just the IBF, but the vacant WBA. That is the fight that revived the division, as it brought the most money into it thereafter. To date, in recent memory, no fight in the heavyweight division has been as big as that fight, generating the kind of fan turnout that it did, generating the kind of money and worldwide attention that it did. That single fight,
that one,
single-handedly revived the heavyweight division, because that is the fight that made people pay attention to the weight class yet again. Not Wilder versus Stiverne or Wilder versus Ortiz. Not none of those fights that Wilder had. None of those fights are what drew eyes back to the heavyweight division, because we're talking about what revived it. And Joshua versus Klitschko is what revived the division. And every moment thereafter, the division has been a hot topic for more reasons than one. Not just for Joshua versus Wilder, but what other fighters may challenge them.
For a perspective on how this fight reinvigorated the heavyweight division and brought attention back to it from all corners of the globe. Right here in the US of A, that fight drew in about 659,000 viewers on Showtime. Except this fight wasn't happening during primetime boxing hours in the US of A. No, this is a fight that was going on at 5, 6 p.m.? Yet it still drew in 659,000 viewers. For a perspective, look at Showtime's recent viewership during primetime hours for boxing. Look at the kind of numbers that Gervonta Davis is bringing in with Gamboa, with Ruiz, with Munoz. I mean, look at most every single PBC card staged on Showtime in recent memory and compare it to the numbers that Joshua put up in the middle of the afternoon going into the evening with Vladimir Klitschko. And these guys' numbers here today, they're not even touching what Joshua put up. That is how much attention he brought back to the division. Compare all of Gervonta Davis's recent numbers during primetime hours to Joshua versus Klitschko's numbers at 5 or 6 p.m. in the afternoon going into the evening. Compare Joshua versus Klitschko's numbers to Jamal Charlo's numbers, his recent set of numbers on Showtime. You understand? You talk about the revival of the heavyweight division, and what does that entail? What does that encompass? You know, how do you make that make sense? Who revived it? Because the division's always had fighters. Hell, 2 of the top 10s from before are still top 10s here today. Both Kubrat Pulev and Alexander Povetkin were and still are top 10 fighters, and they fought in the last generation of heavyweights, and they're still fighting in this generation. But no one would credit them for reviving the heavyweight division, even though they're what it's comprised of. So how do you make it make sense? Who revived the heavyweight division, and what does that encompass? And when you can make people stop and watch, when you can make people pay attention, when your fights are bringing in money to the division, revenue, attention,
that's what revives the heavyweight division, because there have always been fights, there have always been fighters, and it's always been going on. But, You know, to some people, the previous generation of heavyweights, or the previous era, I should say, well, they like to call that the Dark Ages. Well, if someone has brought more attention in this era than the previous era to heavyweight boxing, it was Anthony Joshua, and it still is, because to date, nobody's putting up the kind of numbers that this guy is. Not nobody. Not Tyson Fury, not Deontay Wilder, and not anybody else. I mean, this guy's got Saudi Arabians putting up big cash to be able to host his fights. We're hearing that Istanbul might have thrown their name into the hat. That Joshua's next fight might land over there. Okay, this is global attention, not limited to anybody's single domestic market. The world stops and watches when this guy fights. We saw it in the Klitschko fight, and we just saw it in the Ruiz rematch. That, my friends, is what revives an entire division, an entire weight class. When the entire world stops and watches, when you can make the world pay attention, that's what revives the weight class. And no other fighter like Anthony Joshua is responsible for this. Deontay Wilder, I don't know where in Kevin Lole's mind he figures that this guy single-handedly revived the heavyweight division when he was a part of the previous era and the current era. But even in the current era, he's not putting up the biggest numbers. Are you nuts? He's not bringing the most revenue or attention to the division. Far from it. I don't know what Wilder did that anyone could describe as reviving the heavyweight division. What, fighting Bermane Stiverne 2 times? That's the game changer? That's what changed everything? Not Tyson Fury ending the long reign of Vladimir Klitschko. No, that's not what did it. It's cause Wilder fought Bermane Stiverne 2 times. Or it's cause Wilder fought Luis Ortiz 2 times. That's what changed things. I mean, give me a break. It's for this reason that Kevin Lole's article reads like a revisionist version of history and a brazen piece of propaganda, because anybody who's been keeping up with heavyweight boxing knows that Wilder's hardly responsible for the heavyweight division you see here today. Tyson Fury can claim one end of it, and Anthony Joshua can claim another. Tyson Fury is the catalyst that set these events in motion, though he alone did not revive the division. Anthony Joshua is the other end of that, the other part of the equation. And here today, nobody's putting up the kind of numbers that he is. So if you want to credit somebody for reviving heavyweight boxing, it was Anthony Joshua, because Wilder was around years before Joshua even went pro. Yet Wilder's name didn't seem to matter until Anthony Joshua rolled around. And that, my friends, is the cold, hard truth.